It's a big one on Monday night as the Carolina Panthers head west to face off against the 49ers in prime time. How can they get that big win? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching our show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Back here once again on a Friday where things are a little weird this week with the Panthers playing on the Monday night. Typically on Fridays, we're getting ready for what's a 1 o'clock kickoff on that Sunday. But this Friday, we'll still do the 3 keys of victory. We're going to change things up on the back end of the show. Going to go over some interesting matchups in this game on the Monday night. Also, linebacker injury concerns, something I want to talk about. Then on Monday, we'll talk about the final injury report, give you my final thoughts heading into that game, and then do something else as well to put a bow on this really important Monday night game for the Panthers on the road in San Francisco. Technically Santa Clara against the 49ers on Monday Night Football. But let's go ahead and start up this Friday as we start off every single Friday throughout the regular season, as long as there's a game, of course, with my 3 keys of victory for the Panthers in their upcoming game. Key number 1. I'm still sitting here 5 days after the fact, wondering what on earth did we all just see down there in Atlanta from Bryce Young, who had, in my opinion, his best game of his career, playing on one leg that he injured early in that first quarter, then to come back out there, throw for a franchise record, a career high 448 yards, and to win that game in overtime, to show the guts and the determination and really just the self-belief. After all week long, people were asking, is this guy the right guy? Why have we not seen this offense in the passing game do anything like they did in the second half of the last season? Is it Bryce, especially when you looked at how he performed, not just in the loss against New Orleans, but in the win against Green Bay? And sure, when it mattered most at the end of the games against Dallas, where I thought he played well overall anyways, against Miami, he made the plays necessary. But when you're looking at down in, down out, quarter to quarter, series to series, game to game, where had it been? There it was on Sunday, and my hope now is that Dave Canales saw what Bryce was able to do to have success, and that he can just bottle that up and release it the rest of the year, and that key number 1 can be let Bryce cook. Because you look at it, man, you just don't go from throwing for 124 yards, 102 yards in all those games, and then throw for 448 yards unless something dramatically changed as far as the offensive game plan. I just don't understand how a quarterback can have 84 yards more combined than he had combined in the previous 3 weeks and go out there and do what he did this past Sunday. So clearly, he has not been allowed to do some of the things that we saw last year, led to him to have that high-level success, especially in that Week 18 game we saw down in Atlanta at the end of January earlier this year. So when you look at Sunday, his 10 yards per attempt were a career high, and it was not even close. The next closest was his rookie season, Week 16 against Green Bay, and what was at that point in time the one game you could point to was like, okay, maybe the Panthers got something here after all of the terrible things that have happened in that 2023 season. That performance against Green Bay, the 8.7 yards per attempt, which at that point in time until Sunday had been a career high. That was the game to look at. Now you look at year 3, that game against Atlanta, absolutely one to look at. And if you actually look back at his EPA per dropback, some numbers I brought to you over the last couple of weeks when looking at Bryce and comparing him to other quarterbacks that have their teams in the hunt, he's been pretty low on that list. But when you look at just the best games of his career, EPA per dropback, that game against Atlanta actually was not his best. The Green Bay game, as I mentioned a moment ago, was better than that. And then the Falcons game back in January in Week 18 was actually by a pretty significant margin his best game. Now, 5 touchdowns will do that. But, man, I thought clearly he was the best he has ever been in that win on Sunday, and he now has 10 career game-winning drives, most in the NFL since he joined the league in 2023. 4 so far this season, had 4 last season, and then had 2 in the only 2 games Panthers won back in 2023. And this is an opportunity, too, against what's been a banged-up defense, but really a secondary that's not grading out well for the 49ers. They're 29th right now in success rate against the pass defensively. They're 30th in defensive total pass EPA. This is a bottom 3 or 4 secondary passing defense so far this season. When we were talking to Brian Peacock yesterday for the crossover, he talked about the lack of a pass rush that San Francisco has. And that's what happens when you have the kind of injuries that they've had, like Nick Bosa being out for the season with yet another significant knee injury. That can allow Bryce Young to have plenty of time back there with an offensive line that's protected him. Those 5 sacks he took on Sunday, 4 of those were on Bryce. Only 1 was on the offensive line. That was on Chandler Zavala on the play that injured Bryce. Other than that, he's been protected this season. So he has an opportunity to certainly cook if allowed to by Dave Canales. And of course, the opportunities are there against a secondary that has not been great so far this season. Key number 2. Finish off drives. The 49ers right now are 3rd in the NFL in the red zone. They're scoring a touchdown on 73.1% of their drives. Meanwhile, the Panthers are 25th at 48%. That is a stark contrast when you're looking at these offenses in the red zone. The 49ers are 7th also in third down percentage at 44.2%. The Panthers are 25th at 36.1%. So it's not just finishing drives, it's staying on the field when it comes to these drives, which Carolina has struggled to do at points in time. So they don't really have a high 3-and-out percentage. They've gone for it on 4th and out a ton this year, or 4th down rather, and had success this year. But man, in this game on Sunday, especially on the road in what's going to be a pretty loud environment, you cannot put yourself behind the stakes. You have to be able to, when you get down to the red zone, much like Sunday, when you look at it, after that touchdown to Leggett and then that fumble on the kickoff, the Panthers didn't stall. Like, they have to be able to put not just 3 points, but 7 points on the board on the road, especially against a much better team in San Francisco than what they did against Atlanta on Sunday. That should have never been an overtime game when you look at just how Carolina absolutely dominated time of possession, dominated just total yardage in that second half. That was a game that they absolutely dominated in the second half, and then the 2 series there in overtime. And you look at offensive scores as far as drives that are ending an offensive score for the 49ers, 45.1% of their drives are doing that. That's 5th best in the NFL. The Panthers are scoring on 35.5% of the drives. That's 25th. So in the red zone, staying on the field, and just finishing off drives, like, that is such an important key to winning this game on Monday night. If they cannot do that, I don't see how they're going to beat San Francisco. And at number 3, again, I'm putting this up here like every single week because clearly this is the number 1 determining factor of whether the Panthers win or lose games this season. They're 4-0 when they've won a turnover battle so far this year. Both teams heading into this game have 15 turnovers on the season. That's not good. The Panthers have a -4 turnover margin. The Niners have a -5 turnover margin. The Panthers, though, have 68 points that their opponents have scored off of turnovers, while San Francisco's opponents have scored 51 points off of turnovers. So turnovers are going to be very important in this game. And you have 2 quarterbacks. Brock Purdy, even when he has played, has had some little turnover issues so far this season. Of course, Bryce Young has had those issues as well. This is a game that it's not just about finishing drives. It's about also taking care of the football, because you cannot win on the road on Monday night against a team like San Francisco and expect to come back home with a victory if you do those certain kind of things. The only 2 games Carolina has won when they lost turnover battle are against the Dolphins, who are ass, and the Cowboys, who also aren't really good. San Francisco, you're not going to be able to get away with that on Monday night. So whoever wins turnover margin, I believe, wins this game on Monday. So those are my 3 keys: victory, turnovers, finish drives, and let Bryce Young cook. Those are the 3 keys of victory here on Locked On Panthers. Went over some matchups yesterday on the Crossover Thursday episode with Brian Peacock of Locked On Niners, but a few more things I want to dive into as we head into this Monday night matchup. We'll do that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, Georgia, and here in North Carolina. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss every single time. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Back here on Locked On Panthers, let's take a look at some interesting matchups heading into this game on Monday night between the Panthers and the 49ers, and talked a little bit about this yesterday. Christian McCaffrey, he obviously, our old friend, is an absolute stud still there in San Fran, had the Achilles tendonitis issue a year ago, but he's back healthy this year. But his numbers haven't really been that great. Now, I'm not going to sit here and just look at the numbers and tell you that Christian McCaffrey is still not an absolute monster and a threat and can absolutely win this game by himself on Monday, because that is absolutely the case. We all get just how good CMC is and all wish that he could be here. It's one of those funny things where the Panthers over the last couple of years have tried to find new receivers and a new running back and all of that to try to put around Bryce Young. Well, you know who they got rid of to get Bryce Young? Christian McCaffrey. That second round pick that they got from the Niners in that trade that they made, which it made sense at the time. And I've gone back to just listen to what I said when that happened. I didn't want McCaffrey to leave, but I understood that, okay, guys, if you're going to be, I think at the time it was like a 1-6 football team. You had already fired Matt Rule, Scott Fitterer. Well, he wasn't on his way out the door just yet. But if you're going to be in that situation and you know you need a quarterback, then it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to hold on to a running back that costs you a lot of money. And then let's not forget, a lot of y'all were like, oh, dude, this McCaffrey guy is always hurt. Screw him. Okay, guys. Like, so there's plenty of people who were upset that he wasn't here, but like, let's not do the whole revisionist history where you weren't always upset crying about him not being healthy. And he still had those health concerns in San Francisco. So maybe it was a good thing for the Panthers to move on from him, but like, you can't easily replace a player like Christian McCaffrey at all. But you can, though, at the running back spot, still get high level production, which is kind of the point that I've been making about this is why you don't play running backs. I get why they paid Christian at the time. I get why they paid Chuba. Did I really agree with the Chuba one? No. Christian, I mean, how can you argue it? He was one of the best players in the league at that time, and still to this day is one of the best players in the league when Chuba Hubbard has never been that. And unfortunately, will never be that. But Christian so far this season is only 13th in the NFL in rushing. His yards after contact per rush is at 2.5 yards. That is 36 out of 42 qualifying running backs over on True Media. By comparison, Rico Dowdle is averaging 3.45 yards after contact per rush, which ranks 7th in the NFL among running backs so far this year. When you look at EPA per rush, CMC is only 23rd out of 29 running backs for at least 100 carries. Now, these numbers are going into Thursday Night Football, which, of course, was played last night. I didn't update them, but this is heading into week 12 of the NFL season. But more importantly, look at EPA per play when looking at Christian, because we know he's more than just a guy who's going to run the ball. He's also going to catch it out of the backfield, a lot of those choice routes, and putting your linebackers in the conflict. More on that later. He's 10th so far, but his EPA per target in particular, when just looking at what he does as a receiver, 4th among running backs in the NFL this season with at least 100 carries, and he's 19th in success rate among that category as well. So he has not put up dazzling numbers. I don't know if he would be considered a Pro Bowler at this point in time. Like, I would think Rico Dowdle would be there above him. And of course, Jonathan Taylor's had a great season now playing in the AFC, of course, but he's had a great season. And we haven't really seen Saquon do that much, and let alone the Eagles offense, period, do that much this season. So Christian still obviously one of the better backs in the NFL. Just interesting to look at just some of his numbers so far this season. Now, when you look at the Panthers' run defense, since week 5, during this 5-2 stretch. The Panthers are 8th in defensive rush EPA. They're 10th in defensive rushing 10th in defensive rushing success rate. So they have been a top 10 run defense when looking at EPA and success rate since week 5 and since they've been 5-2. And I was looking at some clip on social media. I think it was the Mina Kimes show. And I think it was her producer maybe was talking like, how did the Panthers get this much better? Like, how are they sitting here at 6-5 in position to potentially win the NFC South, get to the playoffs? And what Mina said, and what anyone who's watched this team, and if you watch the show, would have said also, is that their run defense has improved dramatically. They were so bad last year, especially at the tail end of the season, weren't great week 1. And then after that, aside from the Buffalo game where the Bills had one of the best run offenses in the NFL, this has been a run defense that's done really well, especially in the second half last week, slowing down Bijan Robinson. Had someone send me that. Bijan, that's what it is, not Bijan, but Bijan Robinson. So that this has been a good run defense, and they're going to need to be good again on Monday if they're going to hold down McCaffrey and the Niners rushing attack. The kicking matchup, this is one to look at. I don't think it would have been that interesting until Eddie Pinheiro, our old friend, was injured, but the 49ers had to sign Matt Gay on Wednesday. Now, Gay was recently cut from Washington on Monday. Why was he cut? Because he was 13 of 19 on field goal tries this season. That's 68%. That's bad. He made all of his extra points, though, in the 10 games that he played with Washington before his release. But that was something that an already bad Commanders team didn't want to keep around. And now, at least for this week, Eddie Pinheiro's on the sideline. Matt Gay's in there. And the Panthers possibly have an advantage when it comes to field goal kicking. So the 49ers right now, when you look at, there's a field goal EPA. They have the best in the NFL. Why is that? Eddie Pinheiro, he's 15 of 15, hasn't missed a kick all season long. So that's going to help you when looking at things. And along with the Jets and the Chiefs, the 49ers have not missed a kick. Now, they have missed 3 extra points, and they have the second worst extra point percentage. Now, there's not a lot of missed extra points in the NFL, but there still are a lot more than there used to be, of course, with the rule changes a couple of years ago. It's probably been like a decade now. It's been a while. But yeah, Eddie has missed extra points, has not missed field goals so far this season. Now you're getting the reverse of that, as Matt Gay has missed a lot of field goals, but has not missed an extra point at all. And in that win, that can be very tricky. I'm curious what kind of factor that plays on Monday night. Now, Ryan Fitzgerald, he's helped the Panthers to be ranked 4th in field goal EPA so far this season. He's missed 2 extra points in his own right and has the 3rd worst extra point percentage. But again, not a lot of extra points are missed. So if you miss a couple, your percentage is going to go down. I'm not worried about Ryan Fitzgerald. I do think that looking at this matchup, Fitzgerald versus the veteran Gay, who I believe used to be a Niner, the Panthers should have the kicking advantage in this game on Monday night. So that's one other area I'm looking at. And then finally, was just trying to look at the numbers between Brock Purdy as a starter and Mac Jones as a starting quarterback for the Niners this season. There hasn't really been that big of a shift. If you look at EPA per play, it's a positive 0.04 for the Niners when Brock Purdy's out there, and then it's a 0.03 with Mac Jones. So pretty much right there on the same level. Successful player percentage, 50.3% with Brock, 49.9% with Mac Jones. Third down percentage. This is a little bit of a difference. 50% with Brock, 44.1% with Mac Jones. I understand this is 3 games of Brock Purdy compared to 8 games with Mac Jones. So pretty big sample size for one guy, not as big as for the other guy. Yards per play, 5.6 for Brock Purdy, 5.4 with Mac Jones, and an explosive play percentage. That's throws of 16-plus yard completions and 10 or 12-plus yard runs, 10.7% with Brock Purdy, 10.1% with Mac Jones. So this offense has been pretty much the same, maybe just a tick better with Brock Purdy this season in those 3 games than they have been in the other 8 with Mac Jones. So I thought that was interesting, just looking at the numbers when comparing those 2 quarterbacks so far this year. Now, the Panthers have some injury concerns, especially at linebacker heading into this game. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Usually on Fridays, we take a look at the final injury report for the Panthers heading into that Sunday's matchup. This week, they're playing on Monday, so everything is shifted back a day, as Thursday was the first day that the media was out there for practice this week, the first day to get the injury report. Now, with the 49ers being on the West Coast, that injury report did not come out until 6:46 p.m. on Thursday evening. That will be the case again today on Friday. You will not see anything about the injury report until right there around 7 p.m. And then tomorrow on Saturday, it's going to be still a while. I think around probably like 4 or 5 Eastern until we know what the final injury report is. That was the same case back in week 2 when they played against Arizona on the road. It'll be the same case next week as well with the Rams. And then at the end of the season, week 17, when the Seahawks come to town. So we'll not really have too much of an understanding of everything until Monday. So we'll talk about that on Monday. Well, Saturday, you'll know. But Monday's show, we'll talk more about just where everything stands. But right now, the Panthers have some concerns at linebacker, as both Christian RoZEboom, who's dealing with a hip and a hamstring injury, and Trevin Wallace, who's dealing with a shoulder, did not practice on Thursday. And Dave Canales said early last week on that Wednesday that Trevin was week to week and that he was not going to play against Atlanta, which turned out to be the case. And he's still week to week, and they want to see how things go. But not practicing on Thursday is not a great sign. Now, Thursdays typically are the second day of practice throughout the week, and that's when they have the pads on. So Friday, as in today, that will be an important day to figure out how things are looking for Trevin and for Christian RoZEboom, who went out of the game last Sunday with a right hamstring injury, and I guess he also has a hip, and they're not ready to say he's not going to play, but Dave did say that they are preparing to not have Christian RoZEboom. And I'm guessing they're also preparing to not have Trevin Wallace, which is not a good recipe to have success on Monday when you're facing off against Christian McCaffrey. And you already have 2 linebackers who aren't the best in coverage anyways. But the guys behind him, Claude Sherlis, who I thought had a pretty solid game on Sunday in his secondary role, having to come in and fill in for Trevin Wallace. I don't know if I trust Claude in that spot. And the Panthers are going to have no choice. They did sign Jacoby Windman to the practice squad, and he is somebody who made a couple starts last year. He actually got called for that hip drop tackle in that game against Arizona, which should have not been a hip drop tackle. But whatever. He's now here right now, so that's a person who could potentially go out there and play for them. Of course, Bam Martin-Scott, the undrafted free agent rookie out of South Carolina, he would get an opportunity to potentially play on Sunday. Like, he plays a lot of special teams anyway, so he'll be active, but he could get a potential opportunity to actually start. And I would guess that would likely be the case. Now, Mayama Young Meta, and Dave said his name on Thursday. He also had to get some snaps, I think 5 of those on Sunday in that game against Atlanta. So we're looking at Claude Sherlis, Bam Martin-Scott, and then Mayama Young Meta as the top 3 linebackers. And then I'm guessing a guy like Jacoby Windman, you don't just sign him to the practice squad to not elevate him. And for him, Chris Barnes is another option to play as well. And maybe would make the most sense to have him start with Claude just because of his experience in the league. Because he's played 6 years. So it's 7th year in the league. We'll see how that plays out, but linebacker absolutely is going to be a pretty big concern for Carolina on Monday night. So again, injury report will come out later this evening on Friday. final injury report comes out on Saturday. We'll talk more about that and how it's going to impact Carolina on Monday, because on Sunday, typically like Saturdays are when the Panthers will make whatever moves as far as they're going to activate somebody from IR, they're going to elevate somebody from the practice squad. That will be announced on Sunday. So Monday, I'll give you all that information here on the show, but just want to take a quick look at where things stand as far as injury report from Thursday. And other than that, Xavier Legette with a hip, full participant, that's good. Tedero McMillan, ankle, full. Lathan Ransom missed last week of a hand after having surgery after the injury against New Orleans. He was full, so probably going to play on Sunday, it looks like. Turk Wharton limited with a knee. And then Bryce, of course, with his ankle, he was a full participant. So no concern there with anybody else other than the linebacker group heading into this game on Monday. And one other thing, Dave was asked about just Mike White, who's now back on the practice squad. And there's a potential that they would maybe bring him up as an emergency third quarterback just with Bryce's ankle. Well, considering that was asked before the injury report came out and Bryce is full, he's good. That's not something they're looking to do this week, but potentially it could be something they do just depending on how things play out the rest of the season. So yeah, that's a quick look just at the injury report here on a Friday as the Panthers have quite some concerns there at linebacker at this point in time. But again, we'll go over all this again on Monday once it's finalized. Some of the moves that they're going to make heading into that game on Monday night are official. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I'm back with y'all next Wednesday, doing a nice little hybrid edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag. So either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now or after the game on Monday, rather. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Monday as we continue to prepare for the Panthers face off against the 49ers on Monday Night Football.